Given that you all are reading about the Constitution in your textbooks, and given that we're on the eve of Constitution Day, I thought it would be helpful to consider together what constitutions really are and what purpose they serve. Almost all democracies these days have written constitutions. Britain, New Zealand, and Israel are the notable exceptions to that rule. However, many non-democracies and anti-democracies also have constitutions. Afghanistan, China, Cuba, Egypt, Jordan, Haiti, North Korea, Russia, Rwanda, Turkey, they all have Zimbabwe, Yemen, many others. So if constitutions don't guarantee democracy, what do they do? Okay. So first, when we say that the US has a constitution and Israel and New Zealand don't have a constitution, what we really mean is a written constitution. Okay? This is because literally every country has a constitution. Every organization has a constitution. Your family, your church, your business, and your country. Okay? So some organizations choose to write their constitution on a piece of paper and others don't, but they all have a constitution. Okay? Now, a constitution is a general, broadly agreed upon understanding of how an organization is constituted, okay? How it's constructed. Okay? So it's a set of rules that clarify who does what in this organization, who holds power, and how this power is wielded. For example, can the CEO make a purchasing decision on his own? Or does he need the treasurer's authorization or the board's authorization? Can the minister of your church decide who to hire and fire as a counselor? Or is it a joint decision with other officials or other people in the church? In your family, can the breadwinner in the family decide how to spend the family's money? Or does the other spouse have a controlling say on the family budget? Can the older brother discipline his younger siblings? Is force an acceptable method of disciplining children in this family? And if so, what level of force? In your country, can the president or the prime minister decide how to spend the nation's funds individually or independently? So every organization, every family, every church, every company, and every country has answers to these questions and many, many others. Okay? And these answers are the organization's constitution. Okay? This is how this organization is constituted. This is how it operates. This is how it runs. Okay? So if you look, for example, at the US Constitution, which we chose to write down, you'll see that it answers these questions. It clarifies that Congress does A, B, and C, the president does D, E, and F, and the courts do X, Y, and Z. Okay? So every organization has a constitution, but some of these organizations, some businesses, some families, and some countries actually bother to write these constitutions down on paper and post them for all to see. So the obvious question is, why write it down? Okay? What do written constitutions offer? What do they do? What are they good for? Okay, why is it useful for an organization to write it down? Because again, if constitutions are features of democracies and non-democracies alike, then it seems that they're not as useful as we imagine. Okay. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the famous Supreme Court justice, pointed out in a television interview many years ago, a few years ago, that that what is written on a piece of paper, meaning the written constitution, what is written on a piece of paper is not what shapes the law or the political life or the daily life in a given society. What gives actual force and meaning to the words written on that piece of paper is the sentiments of the people. So this means that what makes England, Israel, New Zealand, Switzerland, and the United States democracies is not whether they have a constitution or have a written constitution or not, but whether their people have embraced democratic values and demand democracy in their civic lives and in their national politics. By the same token, what makes China, Turkey, Russia, and Saudi Arabia what they are is, again, the legal, political, and moral beliefs of their citizens. So if what's written on the pages of a written constitution doesn't determine the laws and political character of a society, why bother writing a constitution? Okay, so it might help to consider this question first on a small scale. Let's say the smallest organization that I listed, and that is your family. What would make a family or a small business transform its unwritten constitution into a written constitution? Okay, what would make a family or business write down its constitution and post it on the fridge or the bulletin board? What usually prompts such a formality is a challenge to the way things have been till now. So if one spouse wants to change the existing power dynamics in the household, or if the children start arguing about their roles and their duties and their rights in the family, that might prompt the parents to write down the rules that govern this family. So once there's a disagreement about who wields power and how different people wield power in this organization, this family, then there's reason to ascertain and agree on a set of house rules, write them down, and post them somewhere. And this way, the family hopes to avoid future dissension. So instead of arguing and renegotiating and redeciding every time anew, all the members of the household can point to this, or can point one another to this rule book, the written document that we all agreed on, to remind each other of the rules and thus avoid an argument or settle an argument. Okay. So if we expand our scope once again to countries, to the largest of these organizations, the countries with written constitutions, it's evident that written constitutions have four functions. First, they give clear, written, legalistic guidance to courts on how to settle arguments. That is, how to rule in cases that come before them. Courts play an important role in democracies and non-democracies alike, and it's useful to the court to have a central legal document off of which to work. Second, written constitutions are a way to educate the citizens about how their country operates, okay? And what they owe the government, what the government owes them, etc. Okay, so the written constitution is useful because it's a civics lesson to help socialize citizens into their country, to understand what kind of country or what kind of family or what kind of business they're operating. Third, written constitutions are likewise, just like they're a message to the citizens domestically, they're also a message, a diplomatic message to the world. Again, it's a lesson about this country. Okay, so the written constitution is a civics lesson to the citizens about what kind of country this is, and it's a diplomatic lesson, or diplomatic lesson to the world, again, about what kind of country this is. And last, written constitutions provide stability in a given society by curbing or tempering or restricting the people's impulse for change. And so written constitutions are they're anti-democratic in this sense because they compel people in the present to live by rules established by people in the past. Because without a written constitution, citizens could simply change the power arrangements in the country according to the will of the people at that time. Okay, so at any one point, the people can democratically simply change the rules. Okay, and a written constitution makes that harder to do. Okay, so it tempers the people's impulse or ability to change the system quickly and repeatedly. Okay, and thus it provides stability. And in this respect, it's no coincidence that written constitutions are a feature of the industrial age, the age of cities, of masses, mass communication, and mass politics. Okay, an age of great demographic, social, cultural, and political instability, in which the public has gained great political power over its government and institutions, even certainly in democracies, but also in non-democracies. In democracies and non-democracies alike, therefore, written constitutions reflect a desire to promote stability in an unstable society. Written constitutions set in stone the basic rules of the society in order to limit the people's ability to change the system back and forth and back again through regular politics. So this means that a written constitution is evidence. The fact that a constitution is written is evidence that an organization, again, your family, your business, or your country, had experienced great instability, uncertainty, and tension that threatened that organization with turmoil or maybe even disintegration. So a written constitution was a method to restore the stability or to restore or to establish stability by setting permanent rules and to communicate to citizens as a civics lesson, not only that, hey, these are the rules that govern our society, but also, again, as a civics lesson, to communicate to the citizens that these are good rules that are worthy of the citizens' support and acquiescence. This is certainly, if you think of the United States, this is certainly the case with the United States Constitution, which was the product of tremendous turmoil during the Revolutionary era. When one examines other countries with written constitutions, you'll likewise find instability, tension, and fear of disintegration as the impetus for their efforts to write a constitution or to write down their constitutions. In South Africa, written constitutions were enacted in the aftermath of the Boer War, which was tremendously destabilizing in that country. Then again, a new constitution with decolonization. Again, when the apartheid regime started to be challenged internally and around the globe. And then once again, a new written constitution after the collapse of apartheid. Germany, another country with a constitution, with a written constitution, enacted its written constitutions in the aftermath of the wars of German unification in the late 19th century, and again, following its political collapse at the end of World War I, again, fear of disintegration into revolution and turmoil. And then again, another written constitution following its crippling defeat in World War II, with, again, uncertainty about the country's ability to hold together. In Israel, a country without a written constitution, there was no clamor for a written constitution in its early years, in its early decades, when Israelis' primary concern involved being annihilated by Arab armies. But since the 1980s and 90s, when Israel's existence was no longer in question, when Israelis felt much more secure about the borders of their country, Israelis became increasingly alarmed by intensifying internal dissension, giving rise to fears of disintegration, turmoil, and even civil war. And it's exactly during this era in the 80s and 90s that calls for a written constitution intensified in Israel. And to a degree, it was even, these calls for a written constitution were even realized in the 1990s and 2000s, not through the writing of a constitution by the legislature, but rather through the jurisprudence of the Israeli Supreme Court. So I hope that's helpful as you read about the US Constitution and its formation, and just to understand its function in a given society.